Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Pikes Peak National Cemetery Dedication Ceremony. On behalf of the Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs, the Honorable Randy Reeves, and the Director of Pikes Peak National Cemetery, Mr. Paul LaGrange, I thank you for joining us in honoring our veterans and celebrating America's newest national shrine, the Pikes Peak National Cemetery. Today, we honor America's veterans who have served to keep our country free and strong. I would like to take a moment to introduce some special guests who are with us today in our audience. Please hold your applause if you can until all guests are recognized. Representing the National Cemetery Administration, please welcome the Chief of Staff, Tom Howard, Deputy Undersecretary for Field Programs and Cemetery Operations, Glenn Powers, Executive Director of Cemetery Operations, Lisa Pozobon, and Continental Executive Director, Stephen Best. We also extend a warm welcome to all of the representatives of our veteran service organizations, elected officials, Gold Star families, and ex-POWs here with us today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Am I able to see who the ex-POWs are right now? The one gentleman in the front. Thank you for your service, sir. Today's ceremony will begin with the presentation of our nation's colors. We are privileged to have with us the NORAD and U.S. Northern Command Joint Color Guard. Leading us today in the Pledge of Allegiance is Walter Jones of the Pikes Peak National Veterans Cemetery Committee. He retired from the Air Force in 1979. He has been a member of the Pikes Peak Veterans Council, DAV Chapter 26, American Legion Post 209, and currently serves as the Sergeant at Arms, Chapter 1, TREA, the Retired Enlisted Association. Today, he represents past and present members of the Pikes Peak Cemetery Committee. During this portion of the ceremony, active duty personnel and veterans may render a hand salute. All others may place their hand over their heart. Please remove your cover. Ladies and gentlemen, if you are able, please rise for the presentation of colors and remain standing for the national anthem and Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
It is now my distinct privilege to introduce our stage guests for today's program. Please hold your applause until I've introduced all of our guests. The Honorable Randy Reeves, Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs. Mr. Paul LaGrange, Director of Pikes Peak National Cemetery. The Honorable Michael Bennett, U.S. Senate. The Honorable Doug Lamborn, U.S. House of Representatives. Secretary of State of Colorado, Wayne Williams. Director of Colorado Veterans Affairs, Ruben Mestis. Former U.S. Congressman John Salazar. Vic Fernandez, President of the Pikes Peak National Veterans Cemetery Committee. Roger Rahill, VA Chaplain. Ladies and gentlemen, help me recognize our distinguished stage guests. I'm now pleased to introduce a man I met yesterday. He's just a fascinating member of our military. Colonel retired Vic Fernandez, the president and one of the founding members of the Pikes Peak National Veterans Cemetery Committee, a dedicated group of local veterans and spouses from the Pikes Peak region who have, for over two decades, advocated for a national cemetery to serve our veterans of Southern Colorado. Vic is a fifth-generation Coloradan. He is born in Trinidad, a West Point graduate, and a 30-year Army veteran. The Colonel served 2 tours in Vietnam. Please join me in welcoming Colonel Vic Fernandez.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for permitting me to say a few words of gratitude to all those who have dedicated so much to assure that our veterans of Southern Colorado have a final resting place close to home that will pay a lasting tribute to their service and sacrifice to the nation. Our veterans are thankful to the Pikes Peak National Cemetery Committee for bearing the standard in the 20-year effort. Will the committee please stand? Thank you. There were 3 of us that started this, co-founders Joe Hanjum and Ralph McCutcheon stood their final formation before the task was done, but are fondly remembered. Miss Lily McCutcheon is here representing Ralph and the Retired Enlisted Association, Chapter 1. Lily. Clara Remley, a 99-year young lady, was to represent her husband, who was an early backer, and last night she had a fall, so she's not here, but we all remember her. Special thanks also has to go to the Pueblo Veterans Ritual Team and to the Pueblo Veterans Council for their unrelenting efforts. Thanks to Congressman Lamborn. And John Salazar. Rusty. John Salazar. For bringing the field hearing of the Subcommittee of Memorial Affairs and Undersecretary William Turk to Colorado Springs in May of 2008 for a field hearing concerning the need for this cemetery, and to our present legislators, especially Senator Bennett, for pursuing the effort with this. Thanks to the National Cemetery Administration for caring. It's all for the veterans.
Colonel Fernandez, thank you so much. Our next speaker, Congressman Doug Lamborn, is the U.S. Representative for Colorado's 5th Congressional District, Throughout his time in public service, Congressman Lamborn has been a strong advocate for our veterans and our military. He currently serves as a high-ranking member on the House Armed Services Committee and was previously a member of the House Veterans Affairs Committee. Now serving in his 6th term, he has consistently supported legislation advancing veterans' benefits, and even before his initial election to Congress in 2006, has long worked for a national veterans cemetery for Southern Colorado. Help me welcome Congressman Lamborn.
Well, thank you all for joining us here to commemorate the opening of the 136th National Cemetery in the United States, the Pikes Peak Veterans Memorial Cemetery. It brings me tremendous joy to finally be able to say those words. It's been a long journey to get here. I know many of you have done a great deal to help us reach this place. I'd like to specifically thank the Cemetery Committee and Vic Fernandez, who brought the idea of a Pikes Peak Regional Cemetery for veterans to me during my first campaign for Congress back in 2006. These veterans have been a fierce advocate for this project for well over a decade and have been a stalwart ally in our fight to get this cemetery. Many people helped, but I want to tell you, this would not have happened without Vic Fernandez. I'd also like to thank former Representative John Salazar, who represented the 3rd District in Congress for many years, Pueblo and the Western Slope. When I first got to Congress, he was willing to reach across the aisle and co-sponsor my bill, which would ultimately lead to the creation of this cemetery. His bipartisanship and foresight certainly helped us get to where we are today. And there are so many other people to thank. I do want to thank also the other members of the Colorado congressional delegation, both the representatives and the senators, Cory Gardner and Michael Bennett, who's here with us today. They helped in every way that they could as well. When I first got into Congress and I was sworn in, and I told staff to draft a bill where we would introduce a legislation creating a national cemetery in Southern Colorado. And they said, okay, we can't do it today. We're going to have to work on it overnight, but we'll have it ready tomorrow. So on my 2nd day in office, I filed that bill, my first piece of legislation ever. And it's been perhaps my main mission in Congress to see that that ultimately got done. And here we are today. I'm just so excited. Vic Fernandez mentioned the hearing in 2008 where one of Randy Reeves' predecessors as Undersecretary, Bill Turk, came out to a field hearing. I was the ranking member on that subcommittee, and John Hall was the committee chairman of that subcommittee. Anyway, Bill Turk went to DIA. This is in May. Remember, May. We're in May right now. He went to the airport at DIA and then rented a car, drove to Colorado Springs where he was going to have this hearing. The weather was so bad, it was a blizzard had flown in just for that day, and he almost couldn't get over Monument Hill. So when he walked in the door, he said, "Now I know why you need a cemetery in Southern Colorado." So maybe someone up there was watching out for us. As many of you know, the 5th Congressional District of Colorado has the largest number of veterans of any congressional district in the United States. No other community has the privilege of having so many call it their home who have served our country. This national cemetery will provide over 100,000 veterans in the Pikes Peak region and all across Southern Colorado access to this tribute to their sacrifice. I just have to think of my father, who was a veteran of many campaigns and battles in North Africa, Sicily, and Italy during World War II, who, like the veterans in your life, have shown us what it meant to be part of the greatest generation. My oldest son volunteered and went into the Army the week after graduating from high school, and I am proud of his service as well. There's something uniquely special about American veterans, and I think it stems from the exceptional country that we live in. These men and women shed the comforts of home, the highest standard of living of any country in world history, and they leave and go to foreign shores. They don the mantle of warrior. Like Secretary of Defense James Mattis has said, America's warrior class have taught the world that there is no better friend and no worse enemy. These brave few have, since the birth of our republic, acted as guarantors of American liberty. From the battles of the Revolution through the American Civil War, in which brother fought against brother, to preserve this grand national experiment and to clarify once and for all that the Declaration of Independence applies to all Americans, our nation has found itself in debt to those few who sacrificed the last full measure of devotion, as President Lincoln said. Sometimes throughout our history, we've fallen short of repaying these heroes the honor that's due them for their sacrifice, but we're not going to fall short here. These fine young Americans, and often they are so young, lost their lives in foreign lands far from home, in the cold steel belly of bombers in the skies over Europe, in the tumbling surf on tiny islands across the Pacific, or house-to-house combat in the sandy streets of villages in Iraq or Afghanistan. Our honored dead have borne the brunt of the cost of our freedom. The Constitution would be but a piece of parchment were it not for the selfless sacrifice made by the armed forces of the United States over these last 2 centuries. Fortunately, most of our brave warriors do come home. Some return, though, bearing physical wounds from their service, some emotional scars, but all of them leave the service indelibly changed by that experience. So whether they spent years steadfastly manning the missile fields of our nuclear deterrent, or months combating communist aggression in the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, or the frozen mountains of the Korean Peninsula, we find ourselves overwhelmed by the gift of sacrifice that these veterans have given to us. There's truly nothing we can do as a nation to fully repay them for the burden they have carried on our behalf. But we do know this: we are compelled to do something for them to distinguish them from their peers and to signify our deep, deep appreciation for what they have done for us, their fellow citizens. So we find ourselves gathered here the Friday before Memorial Day near America's Mountain, Pikes Peak, to commemorate the opening of the Pikes Peak Veterans Memorial Cemetery. It is a celebratory event, the culmination of many years of hard work, but it's also a solemn ceremony in which our community dedicates this land as the final resting place for our beloved veterans. This tranquil place with Cheyenne Mountain and Pikes Peak eternally standing sentinel over their graves will serve as a peaceful monument to the service Pikes Peak veterans have given to their fellow citizens. Their loved ones will be able to visit this magnificent place and remember the time that they spent together here on this earth, while men and women of future generations will look upon it as a reminder of the price of liberty and will be grateful. So thank you all again for being here today. Thanks for everyone who did so much to get us here. Most of all, a big thanks to our veterans. God bless our veterans, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Congressman Lamborn. As Colorado's senior United States Senator, Michael Bennett has worked for nearly a decade to bring this national cemetery to southern Colorado. From introducing legislation in 2009 to securing the funding for construction, Senator Bennett was integral in making today's opening ceremony possible. In all of his work, he is committed to making our state the very best place for service members, veterans, and their families to train, work, live, and retire. Please join me in welcoming Senator Michael Bennett.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Good morning. It is wonderful to be with all of you, and I think both John Salazar and Doug Lamborn would agree with me when I say it is so nice to come home because people in Colorado are so much nicer than they are in Washington, D.C. We're a state that's a third Democratic, a third Republican, and a third Independent, and we seem to get along just fine. I don't know what's wrong with that place. I also would like to acknowledge Mayor John Suthers, who's here today from Colorado Springs. Thank you for letting me come back once again. And Doug, thank you for your leadership. Congratulations. It is an honor to join you as we dedicate these 374 acres as a hallowed resting place for veterans of southern Colorado. And more than anyone, I want to thank those who dedicated themselves to this worthy cause. We stand here only today because you fought for Colorado's veterans to lay in eternal rest near the communities they call home. I do want to mention, Doug mentioned Monument Hill. I can remember sitting in Secretary Shinseki's office with John Salazar, and John Salazar had a map, and we basically said, we're not leaving until you change the rule. And I think about an hour and a half later, he said, get out of my office. But they changed the rule. And I also want to remember Mark Udall, my colleague in the Senate, who was there when we introduced the Southern Colorado Veterans Cemetery Act in 2009. And before I get to the people that really deserve the credit, also Annie Oatman Gardner from my staff here in Colorado Springs, who really did the legwork to get this done. She deserves a round of applause. And so, for the time I have left, I'd like to recognize the members of the Pikes Peak Veterans Cemetery Committee Vic mentioned earlier, those now joining us and those founding members who are no longer with us. I want to read their names because they, more than anybody, I think, deserve credit for today. Vic Fernandez, Joe Henjum, Ralph McCutcheon, Paul Darrow, John Sains, Jack Casey, J.D. Rivas, Wally Jones, Pete Van Tetley, Linda Lee Witt, Jerry Oyen, Dr. Luis Valerio, Carl McDaniel, Bud Saylor. Please give each of those individuals a round of applause. This cemetery is a credit to their work. It's a credit to never giving up. It's a credit to having a 20-year-long vision. It is an incredible legacy for them, and I think also an example for the rest of us about how we ought to operate in this democratic republic of ours. And it is a great testament, as Doug said, to the extraordinary sacrifice of the men and women who will lay here. It is my hope that for decades to come, generations of Coloradans will come here to not only honor this sacrifice, but to reflect on our own opportunity to serve, to reflect on our duties as citizens, and to realize that all of us too have a role to play in defending our republic and the freedoms we hold dear. Thank you for letting me be part of your ceremony today, and thank you for all of your efforts. There is only one veterans cemetery in the world that has Pikes Peak as a backdrop behind it. Congratulations.
Senator Bennett, thank you. It is now my pleasure to introduce the director who will be responsible for the management and oversight of the Pikes Peak National Cemetery. He is Mr. Paul LaGrange. He has served as Assistant Director of Riverside National Cemetery in California and Camp Butler National Cemetery, in Springfield, Illinois. He is an Army veteran with more than 33 years of combined active duty and reserve service as both an enlisted soldier and a commissioned officer. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome your Director of Pikes Peak National Cemetery, Mr. Paul LaGrange.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Wow, what a turnout. Thank you so much for coming today. So thank you for taking time out of your busy week to attend this cemetery dedication. I'm honored and privileged to serve as the first director at Pikes Peak National Cemetery. But first, I'd like to give you a little information about our cemetery. This 374-acre cemetery is designed to take care of the burial needs of the veterans and their eligible family members in this region for the next 100 years. The cemetery construction is on schedule. Thanks to the hard work and efforts of our construction general contractor, GNC Fabcon. The president is James Griffith. He is a retired colonel, so thank you, GNC Fabcon. So along with GNC Fabcon and the oversight by our professional team of engineers from the VA's Construction and Facility Management Office, Mr. Brian Bodner, project manager, and Miss Rosa Chandler, senior resident engineer on site. So thank you. As we get close to the opening, we continue to hire additional staff members. Our new cemetery foreman is Mr. Andrew Alonzo. Andrew's here today. He's helping out with the logistics here of the event. So just a little background on Andrew. Andrew hails from Lamar, Colorado, right here in this area. He's a retired Marine Corps and Army veteran, and he's worked at Fort Logan National Cemetery for the last 23 years. Our new program specialist is Mr. Rich Munoz. Rich is a native of California. Rich is a retired Marine, has worked at Riverside National Cemetery for the last 3 years. So as you guys can tell, I'm blessed to have such a great staff. They will do a wonderful job of taking care of the veterans and the family in this southern Colorado region. The first burials at Pikes Peak National Cemetery are expected to begin in October 2018 in our early turnover area, which is right behind us over here by the main gate. When we open, we'll accept casket and cremated remains only. And as we get closer to the fall, we'll provide more information on our schedule and on our first burials. When phase 1 of the construction is complete in 2019, we'll have additional burial options, interment options, and memorial options for families, veterans, and their families. In addition, the City of Colorado Springs Public Works Division is resurfacing our road out here, Drennan Road, right after So they're going to be resurfacing the road right after Memorial Day. So thank you, Colorado Springs. Very good news. In closing, I would be remiss if I did not thank the people that have been a big part of my life and the people that helped me make this event possible today. First, I'd like to thank my beautiful wife, Karen, and my lovely daughter, Allison, for being here today and for supporting me. Thank you, guys. In addition, I want to thank my good friend, Airborne Paul Atkins, my personal hero. Paul's the president of Riverside National Cemetery Support Committee, and he came out here this week. He's going to be running the Memorial Day program at Riverside, but he came here to support me, so thanks, Paul. I would also like to extend my sincere appreciation to all the Department of Veterans Affairs employees that helped make this day possible. The VHA, Eastern Colorado Health Systems, VBA, Denver Regional Benefits Office, NCA Central Office, Vicki Hawley. Where's Vicki at? Vicki, can you stand, please? Vicki was the one that put this program together. NCA Southeast District and Michelle Kosho. Michelle was one of the co-persons that helped make this event possible. Michelle's over there. Thanks, Michelle. NCA Continental District, that's my district, and that's led by our executive director, Mr. Steve Best, right here in the front row. Thank you, Steve, and all the Continental District's folks that helped make this happen today. They're a huge, huge team to help make this happen because I'm an Army of One right now. My employees start working later on, so thank you. Fort Logan National Cemetery and their director, Matt Williams, helped me as well prepare the site and with the logistics, so thank you, Matt. And Perry Hurd is the assistant director at Fort Logan as well, and he's here today as well. So thank you, all you Veterans Affairs employees that helped make this day possible. Last, I want to thank Miss Diane Derby for being our MC today. Diane, thank you. And the other individuals and organizations, private, government, and military, listed on your program that helped make this day possible. Special thanks goes out to Mr. Vic Fernandez and the Pikes Peak and the Pikes Peak National Veterans Cemetery Committee members that are seated right over here. And all the local, state, and federal elected officials in attendance today who helped make this cemetery possible. Thank you. So let's collectively give everyone that helped out with the ceremony a big round of applause. So in closing, I'm honored to be a part of this proud and patriotic community. I look forward to serving the veterans and the families in this area for many years to come. Have a wonderful Memorial Day weekend as we remember our service members who paid the ultimate sacrifice for this great country. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. LaGrange. I'd now like to introduce Mr. Randy Reeves. Randy C. Reeves was nominated by President Donald Trump to serve as the 6th Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs and was confirmed by the United States Senate on November 8, 2017. As Undersecretary, he leads 135 national cemeteries in providing dignified burial service for veterans and eligible family members. Prior to his confirmation, Mr. Reeves served as the Executive Director of the Mississippi Veterans Affairs Board. That was from 2011 through 2017. He also served as the president of the National Association of State Directors of Veterans Affairs in 2017. It's an organization whose members serve and represent our nation's 22 million veterans. In January 2009, he was appointed as the first director of the Mississippi Veterans Memorial Cemetery. During his 27-year military career, he served at sea and ashore in various positions, including command. He is a veteran of Operation Desert Storm and the global war on terrorism with multiple deployments during combat operations. Please help me welcome him now.
Thank you, Diane, for that wonderful introduction. And thank you to all of those here on the dais with me, all of you who worked so hard to make sure that this happened. To all of the support committee, and I always call you support committee because I hope that's what you'll become now that you have got the cemetery being built here. And to all of those who worked so hard to make today possible, thank each and every one of you from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of all the men and women of the National Cemetery Administration and the veterans of this great nation. You know, when I travel across the country, I have the greatest of honor and opportunity to meet people who have served our country and people who continue to serve and take care of those who have given both the ultimate sacrifice and those who continue to be with us as remembrance of what it takes to have a country that is free like this one. If I can take just a moment, I'd like to introduce someone that I met only yesterday. Back here in the back, a young man, Master Sergeant Steve Cunningham. And I believe, Steve, you've got your wife Heather here with you. Thank you both for being here. I was sitting on the plane next to Master Sergeant Cunningham yesterday. Told him where I was going. I was headed here, he was headed back to Fort Carson. And I looked and I saw the emblem on his shirt. I readily recognized it. It's a Master EOD technician, United States Army. And he didn't talk too much. He was pretty quiet. But you know, that's the way our warriors are. But we were able to get out of him that he's done multiple deployments in Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan for our country. But what struck me the most in the story I want to tell you is something he told me yesterday. We were talking about what it means to remember and honor those who have served our country, those who have given the greatest sacrifice possible. And he and I have been at some of the same places. He was down at Eglin Air Force Base because that's where we train EOD troops. And I've been there too. That was my first assignment. And he told me about a wall where they honor and remember the 40 EOD troops who have given their life during the current wars. And he was a part of putting that together. But the most important thing he said to me is he looked across at me and he said, "Sir, the two most important words you just said was, we remember." Thank you for reminding me. Other people that I meet are those who are left behind when our young men and women give their lives to ensure freedom for us. And as I was walking in today, I saw and had to go across and greet members of Gold Star families. I didn't get to everybody, I apologize. But what I would like now is all the members of our Gold Star families, please stand up and be recognized, if you're able. And I commit to each and every one of you, on behalf of this country, on behalf of our Commander-in-Chief, and all of us who serve, we will remember. And here in southern Colorado, this is the place we will always remember. And I have to tell you, this is a great time to dedicate a new veteran cemetery. In only 3 days, as was mentioned earlier, our nation will commemorate the 150th anniversary of Memorial Day, as officially declared by General John Logan in 1868. It is also this year is also the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. But it was in the midst of the Civil War that Congress realized the nation would need a place to remember the fallen. They authorized the President Lincoln, to establish cemeteries for soldiers who had died in service of our country. And from this one sentence, the National Cemetery System was born. In 1862, 14 national cemeteries were established. More soon followed. And today that mission continues unabated, unwavering, and undiminished, as VA now cares for more than 4.6 million veterans and their family members interred in our currently 135 national cemeteries. Pikes Peak, number 136, will provide that final resting place for over 95,000 veterans here in southern Colorado. Here we will show our loyalty to Colorado veterans who so valued America that they placed their lives above all else in defense of this country. Here we will pay homage to the ideals that they served, fought, and some died for. We will never forget the sacrifices that they made for us. So we dedicate this new place in their honor, a place that reflects our gratitude and our devotion for their having done their duty. And this place and all others like it is so very important for educating a nation, especially our young people, about the history of our country's military and its veterans. These national cemeteries are living and dynamic places, and every veteran that will be buried here has a story, one that deserves to be remembered. That's why I have personally directed that the National Cemetery Administration will have one single mission and vision for ensuring that no veteran ever dies. It is said that every person dies two deaths. They die that first physical death when breath leaves them for the last time. But they only truly die sometime in the future when no one speaks their name or no one tells their story. This second death is something that I am committed to doing everything I can to make sure our veterans never suffer. And we're taking action on this vision in other places, where our Veterans Legacy Program is creating partnerships all over the country with universities and other organizations to study, learn, and teach about our veterans buried in our national cemeteries. For example, in Colorado, students and scholars from the University of Denver will be working with area school districts to conduct research on Colorado veterans. This is our second full year of the Veterans Legacy Program, and we are having real impact on students and communities. And I remember what one student from when I was down in Central Florida at the University of Central Florida had to say. And he told me the most gratifying thing to him that he was able to bring his veteran back to life, a veteran that had been lost to history. You know, recently I was in St. Louis at our Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery to speak at the interment of Fireman First Class Charles Ogle. Fireman Ogle was aboard the USS Oklahoma on December 7th, 1941, when the ship was torpedoed and it sunk at Pearl Harbor. He was only 20 years old. And his remains had been buried in our national cemetery in Hawaii and then were identified and were returned for interment in his native Missouri. His two younger sisters, now well into their 80s, were there at Jefferson Barracks for that interment. And I greeted both of them, and I presented memorial certificates on behalf of the President of the United States and of our grateful nation. And when I looked into their eyes, I did not see elderly ladies. What I saw was two little girls who had lost their big brother. It was as if 76 years had been rolled away, and he had been lost in battle only yesterday. And in their eyes, though, I saw something remarkable. I saw love of someone so deeply special, pride for a loved one's service to our country, and hope that the country that he served and that he died for would never forget. Today we write the first chapter of Love, Pride, and Hope about the veterans who will be interred here at Pikes Peak National Cemetery. This is a place of honor and also a place of learning, a place of fellowship, and yes, a place of healing. And we know that however much our heart desires it, we can never, ever fully repay the debt that we owe to our servicemen and women and their families, but we must try. What is left to us as a nation and as a community is to ensure that our veterans and their families receive every ounce of honor and recognition that they so richly deserve, along with full access to the benefits they have earned. And I will tell you, to make sure that they receive the benefits that they've earned, I will always work with our members of Congress and whoever will help me to make sure we have access. So today, let us remember this moment by serving our veterans as well as they have served us, and by ensuring that dignity, honor, and respect are the rewards for what our men and women have given. To the Colorado veterans who have defended this nation in the past, to the men and women serving today, and to those who will serve in the future, we, and I sincerely, offer our humble appreciation and admiration for what they've done for this nation. May God bless all who serve and who have served. May God bless those who have given their family members so that we may be free. And may God bless these United States of America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Undersecretary Reeves. Leading us in prayer today is a 20-year veteran of the United States Army, retired Chaplain Major Roger Rahill. Chaplain Rahill currently serves as a Department of Veterans Affairs contracted chaplain, ministering to the needs of veterans and their families in eastern Colorado while working out of Colorado Springs. What a powerful job. Help me welcome Chaplain Rahill.
As one nation under God, let us pray. Almighty God, sanctify this ground in the shadow of mountain majesty where we count the brave, we count the true, that it may be hallowed until earth fades away, until eternal glory is at last revealed, and we join our fallen veterans in your presence. Lord, bless their loved ones in their grief, soothe their hearts, help them bear their veterans' absence patiently. Steady their faith, strengthen their will. Let nothing separate them from your love. For those whose bodies will repose here, who loved duty more than life, who shared the comradeship of service and pain in defense of liberty, for those patriots whose day is done, from whose mortal lives the sun is gone, we ask, dear Lord, safe rest and your well done. For it is for you, ultimately, that our beloved veterans battled evil and promoted good. As Coast Guardsmen, search the tumultuous deep for one lost soul. As sailors and airmen venture vast spaces to create a national safety net. as soldiers and Marines, trod the toughest terrain to root out our enemies. Lord, you go to no end to save us. And to you belongs the victor's crown, for yours is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. We will now ask our participants to move to the plaque unveiling area. They are Under Secretary Randy Reeves, Cemetery Director Paul LaGrange, Senator Bennett, Congressman Lamborn, former Congressman Salazar, and Secretary of State Wayne Williams. The plaque reads, Pikes Peak National Cemetery, dedicated to the memory of all the patriotic men and women who answered their country's call to service. Donald J. Trump, President of the United States, Robert Wilkie, Acting Secretary, U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Randy Reeves, Undersecretary for Memorial Affairs, National Cemetery Administration, dedicated May 25th, 2018. Please unveil the plaque.